Our guest today is Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, a neuroscientist, educator, and best-selling author of 6 books. I only have 2 under my belt, who has spent his career at places like Harvard University and the University of Melbourne studying one core question: how do human beings actually learn? And his latest book, The Digital Delusion, connects the dramatic drop in standardized test scores among American kids directly to the rise of classroom technology. And it has sparked a genuine movement, with parents handing out copies at school board meetings and Jared testifying before the U.S. Senate. And today, Jared and I are digging into what the research really shows about screens and learning, why he believes EdTech has been a fundamental mismatch for how kids' brains work, and what parents can actually do about it. I am so excited. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. So I have a 17 and a half year old. We went through his late elementary and middle school years during the time of COVID. And so that was just an extra, just slug to the gut when it comes to trying to keep parenting and tech and education, in their places. So it's been a hornet's nest. And so I have my gut to go off of as a parent, my experience as a parent, and then my experience as the CMO of Bark. But you have a background in both education and cognitive neuroscience, which is a pretty unusual combination. So how did those two worlds come together for you, and what pulled you towards studying learning specifically?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I was a teacher originally. So that's where my teaching was my passion. That was all I wanted to do. But I was a teacher back during the decade of the brain. So the sexiest thing then was neuroscience. So I figured, look, if everyone is talking brain books, brain gym, I'll go learn that myself, with the assumption that I'd bring that back to my classroom and say, here's what it all means. But I kind of got stuck in academia. I always say it's a black hole. Once you go to academia, there's always one more thing you have to do. So I've been kind of stuck there. Yeah, I urge people, and if you know you're going back, just have a date. I'm just getting a PhD or a master's and get out. Otherwise, you become this. But yeah, so my focus was always going to be learning. That was all I cared about. That's the only reason I did it, was to become a better teacher. And then in the time that I've been in academia, I've been lucky enough to not just focus on neuroscience, but you name it, AI, behavioral economics, psych. I study all this stuff, anything that has to do with learning, with the idea that maybe I can synthesize all this and have a better picture of what this all means for schools, classrooms, and our students.
Oh my gosh. At what age did you know that this was your passion?
29. It was the weirdest.
Yeah.
I hated science growing up. I was like the consummate in high school. I just didn't want to do it. College, didn't study it. I think I was around 27 when I read a book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge. And that was when I said, there you go. That's what I will be doing for the rest of my life.
That is so cool, and gives a lot of hope to people out there who have kids that are 21 and don't know what they want to do with their lives.
Just keep chugging along. If we're paying the rent, then let us do our thing. We'll figure it out eventually.
For sure.
I'm sure there were plenty of evenings when my parents were having a chat about me, but we made it. We made it in the end. We figured it out.
Clearly, they I'm sure are very proud. So before we get into the book, tell us a bit about the work you were doing through LME Global and your Learning Blueprint program. Yeah. What were you seeing in schools that was already raising red flags for you?
I think so. That was my big takeaway, was I was always going to bring learning back to schools, but I was always going to do it with teachers. If we knew better about learning, that'd make us teach better. But then somebody said, can you do a study skills program with kids? And so, yeah, sure, no worries. Go through an entire semester teaching kids how to study. And what you see at the end of that was about 90% of kids could tell you what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. They knew the good from the bad strategies. But when you track the kids, only 30% of them were doing it. So it's like everyone knew what to do, but no one made it happen. So that's when I kind of had to think and started realizing, well, wait a second. What if instead of teaching kids study strategies, we taught them learning? The same way I'm teaching teachers learning. How does memory work? How does attention work? And what we found is when I just started teaching never talk about study strategies, just teach kids how to learn, the number jumped from 30% to about 65% of kids started doing really good strategies with their studying and learning without me ever saying a word. So that's where I really decided, if we want agency amongst our students, if we want them to take control of their learning and their development, which is exactly what we want, they need to know they need to know what it is. And I think very rarely are we explicitly told, here's what learning is, here's how it works.
The Digital Delusion, which I was handed a copy of, and I was like, this could not be better timing. It makes a pretty bold argument that EdTech isn't just underperforming, it's fundamentally incompatible with how children learn. So walk us through the core of that claim.
I think what we've been seeing is Gen Z has been dropping pretty significantly on basically every cognitive measure we have. So it's literacy, numeracy, executive functioning, behavioral control, emotional regulation, even basics like working memory. Everything seems to be going in the wrong direction. And we couldn't, for the life of us, I mean, we got to address it, but no one can quite lock down what the heck is going on. And by all means, it's going to be a multifaceted explanation, from family life to home, to mental well-being, to smartphones. But within schools specifically, school was the one place where we always said, well, at least here we're kind of safe from all that. But in schools specifically, that's where a lot of things started to drop. All international tests, didn't matter where you were in the world, everything started to go down. So that's when we had to jump in and say, what changed? What's going on? Can we track that to any particular movement? And the big change we saw was tech. Anytime a country or a state starts to introduce tech more and more and more to the classroom, learning goes down, down, down. So by all means, there's more to it than just that. Like we were saying, smartphones, sure. But within a classroom setting, it seems to be the more we rely on tech as opposed to human beings, the worse learning becomes. And I think, I don't want to jump on anyone's here, but I think a big argument that a lot of people make then is if you're looking at, say, test scores or development scores, that's all correlation, not causation. Which, to be frank, that statement does my head in. Largely because it's the most misused statement. Most people use it not because they genuinely understand it or are trying to make a point. They use it just because they want to shut the conversation down. They're like, oh, well, that's just correlation. Well, yeah, okay. Just a heads up.
Yes.
When something is causative, we would also expect to see correlations. So just because correlation doesn't mean causation, it doesn't mean that the two are unrelated or that correlation doesn't mean causation. It just means here's a signal, you better start looking deeper. And so that's what I tried to do with this book was, okay, if all the correlation goes in one direction, now can you look at research? If research is going in the same direction, now you can look at mechanism. And if we can have a biological mechanism that explains everything above it better than any other explanation we got, that's as close to causal inference as we can get. And when it comes to tech, it was easy. The correlation was there, the research was there, and the mechanisms of human learning were all there to just line up and say, bang, bang, bang. Look at tech, everyone. That it's not just a flippant, ooh, what a weird pattern. It's a very specific pattern that we now basically understand why it's happening.
Totally. And data point of one, but I still, despite being, the CMO of a tech company and super tech savvy, and I love so many things about tech, I still journal by hand and take handwritten notes because it helps satisfy a part of my brain that typing does not, and it helps me retain the information, even the way that I'm writing it out, the underlines, the bolds, my brain retains information better. But again, data point of one, what does the neuroscience show us about screens and how the brain processes information?
You just hit there. I mean, dozens of ways we can go with this, but you just hit a big one is, let's just take writing, for instance.
Yes.
Most human beings think they are a brain inside of a body. Like your gray matter just hitching a ride in here. No, you are a body. You're not riding in a body. You are as much your heart and your lungs and your spleen and your fingers. You are as much this as you are your brain, which means how we integrate and utilize this will determine our cognition, what we can think, what we can't, how we move, how we don't. Typing is a very dictatorial task. Basically, you have a thought, you write it out. That's about as far as that's going to go. You can't do much with it other than spit it out. Yeah. Handwriting is thinking. The tool you're using, the position of your body, your breathing, the way you're forming your letters, like you said, you start to do underlines, you're crossing.
Yes.
You are thinking through the act of writing in a very different way than you're thinking through the act of typing. So in a real sense, when we do anything by hand, whether it's rough drafts, whether it's note-taking, do it by hand, you remember more, comprehend better than if you did the exact same thing on a keyboard.
100%. And not to interrupt, but that's what I'm doing right now. Like, I live my life by Google Calendar right now. Like, that's how I show up for things on time, right? Yeah. But I also keep a paper full year calendar. And whenever I have to think about like major things and what I'm doing, my brain goes to this. I'm like, oh, August 3rd, that's my son's first day of school. I put it in orange. Like, I'm never ever recalling a Google Calendar block. It's kind of like, I've heard people say, like, when kids dream, they're not dreaming of texting people or playing Minecraft. They dream about flying or swimming, or, you know what I mean? And so I think there's something to dig into there.
I think you've got a really good point. It's funny, when we talk about time management and time regulation with kids, or even with adults, one of the first things we'll say is get a hard copy calendar. The idea being exactly what you just showed us was the human brain needs spatial relationships. That's one of the ways it forms memories, is where in space does something belong. That becomes a part of your memory and ultimately determines how you can access that memory later. On a calendar, in a book, everything has an unchanging three-dimensional location. It's not just you're learning a fact, it's you're learning a fact in relation to everything else, and you can think to yourself exactly what you said. Wait a second, on the bottom right of that calendar, that's where something important is. I'm good. Go to a screen, you lose any sense of three-dimensional location. An entire aspect of human memory gets dumped. Like if I'm reading a book, the same words that were once in a very clear spot now go through the middle of the page, go through the top. There is no location. Google Calendar, every page looks exactly the same, so I don't know where in relation it is. All of those little cues. And to be fair, I don't think we knew we were doing it right. Well, I don't think we did it intentionally. All these things like building books and building calendars, they were helpful, but I think only now we're starting to realize specifically why. They align with how humans think and interact with the world. Whereas tech, the way it makes everything so dang easy, simply doesn't. All of that friction, all of those little cues are very important to us.
They are. They absolutely are. And especially during critical windows of development, birth to age 5 and up until middle school and beyond. And it's just, we can go deeper there. But you draw a direct line between the rise of classroom devices and the collapse in test scores over the past decade. Critics say that's a correlation, not a cause. We talked about that. But how do you respond to people who say that there are other factors at play, like mental health?
Yeah, I've got no problem with it. And I think the key thing to remember is when looking for a solution, you got two choices. You find one problem and tackle that at a time, or you try and tackle 15 problems at once. Anyone who's ever tried the latter will fail miserably. So it's not that there isn't more, and I'm not acknowledging that they're pretending this is the only thing. It's that if we want to make a difference, we've got to chip away one brick at a time. And this is a very clear brick we can start to either put in the wall or take out of the wall, depending on how you're thinking about it. But when it comes to some of those other things, I always say, man, other people have done it better. You want to talk about smartphones, you go to John Haidt or Gene Twangy. You want to talk about moral kind of collapse and the over-medicalization of childhood, go to Abigail Schreier, Greg Lukianoff. These people have done that better. None of them talked about EdTech. Does that mean they don't think it's an issue? No, it just means every one of us is picking our problem that we can bring light to. We can shine a light and say, here's one brick in the wall. Can you handle this brick? Rather than being overwhelmed by saying, by the way, here's the 100 bricks that are causing a problem. Let's do them all simultaneously. Then everyone says, no, we don't got time for that. It's too hard. So it doesn't mean there's nothing more. It just says, here's one very specific one. If you can understand that, we can make moves here.
Yeah, and I don't know if you meant to throw out a Pink Floyd reference, but I'm here for it.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So a lot of parents, myself included, have come to the realization that the tech that their schools have given them has not panned out the way we all thought. You know, kids are watching YouTube instead of learning, which not to say you can't learn from a YouTube video, but it's like 3% of the time they're consuming educational content on YouTube, and 97% of the time it's influencer videos or watching other people game, right?
Yeah.
They're also able to view pornography. They're also able to bully each other via Google Docs. The memory retention. There's a lot of downsides. So anyway, there's a lot of parents listening that have kids in school where every child has a Chromebook or iPad. What specific things are happening neurologically when a child is doing most of their learning on a screen versus on a paper or through discussion?
Yeah, I think there's again many mechanisms, but I think there's two really important ones to hit. Building on what you just said, one is multitasking. Is the I would argue the worst thing you can do for learning and memory is multitasking. Because of the way the brain works, we are a serial processor. The brain can only tackle one thing at a time. It can run some things in the background, but in order for you to understand those things, it's got to come to the foreground, and we've got one spotlight of attention. Tech works by multitasking. Tech is a parallel processor. A computer can do 50 things at once simultaneously. The problem is when we use tech, we try to think like technology. That's why right now I have 15 tabs open. When I'm on YouTube, I don't make it 2 minutes into a video till we're onto another video. It's asking you to constantly jump. Now, when you're consuming material, fine, who cares? I'm not there to learn it. I mean, like, if you give me an hour on YouTube and I watch 100 videos, I will remember nothing, but it's cool. It killed an hour. That's fine consumption. Learning isn't consumption. If your goal is learning, you need deep, focused attention. You cannot skip that step. So now when we put kids on a screen and say, can you focus on a screen? The answer is no. I've trained myself for thousands of hours every year to not do exactly what you need me to do here. And this is why when you give a kid a screen, let's say you had invented the best digital tutor in the world. It trumps any educator we ever built. Your kids will still only make it about 6 minutes on average before they start multitasking. When they use a computer with a teacher there, 24 to 38 minutes of every hour, they are off-task multitasking. Again, it's not because they lack some moral fortitude or they're weak people. It's a pure training thing. That is literally what these things are designed to do. It's called the attention economy. They keep making money the longer our eyes are on a screen. They know that to keep your eyes on the screen, we got to keep changing things. Fine for consumption, horrible for learning. So when you bring a tool for entertainment into a classroom and try and pretend it's a tool for education, you've already made a big mistake. And you put a huge hurdle between the kid and the outcome you want. Most kids can't get over it. I think another kind of key thing then to think about here is human beings have evolved for 150,000 years to learn from other human beings. That is what makes us so unique compared to every other animal. We have built-in biological mechanisms that make learning from each other stupidly simple. So the term you'll most likely hear is called affective empathy. But realistically, what that is it's physiological synchrony. Human biology can sync up. In a very real sense, if you and I start to synchronize right now, our hearts are going to beat simultaneously. We're going to breathe at the same time. We're going to blink simultaneously. If I can image our brains, they start to look almost identical. In those moments, learning soars. Because as a student, I'm no longer learning from a teacher. I am thinking like the teacher, which means I'm making the exact same cognitive moves she is. Over a screen, it is wickedly difficult to synchronize with another human being. Specifically, if I don't even have another human being, if I'm just using a digital tutor like iReady or Duolingo, where there is literally no biology there, one of the biggest learning mechanisms we have just disappears. One of the things we were built to do is gone. And learning by default will start to go down. So this is why I say, man, you as a teacher, you do the exact same thing on Zoom as you do live in a classroom. Kids will learn more from you in the classroom. And I don't think a single teacher has ever been shocked by that statement, because if you went through COVID, you recognized it.
What about, I've always preferred physical books over digital books. And I love audiobooks just for a time saving standpoint because I can like work out and listen at the same time. But even then, it's a different way I'm processing. Like I'll get ideas, but I'm not like able to like highlight, and like so. I guess for adults, what is the difference between e-reading and reading physical books?
By all means, here's the kind of hierarchy. Scrolling like through a web page or a document, the worst. Kindle, where you can flip pages, slightly better. Physical copy, the best. And all the research keeps coming bang, bang, bang like that. And again, the reason it's going to go back to that spatial thing is because books have a three-dimensional location, we remember them and treat them differently than everything else. So one of the things I tell schools is if you did nothing different, you didn't change a single thing in your pedagogy except you had physical books instead of screen, your kids will learn more, comprehend better, retain longer. You change nothing else but the medium, learning goes up because it just aligns with our brains much better than the tech stuff does.
Is it possible, and this is a rhetorical question, but you're the doctor here, you're the scientist here. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that maybe not as many children have ADHD as we think? It's more of the fact that they're being required to sit for 8 hours a day and learn via a screen. Game. Yeah. Like talk to me about just what is this doing to their bodies?
So in this, I always get in a bit of trouble for this, but it's all right. Just is what
it is. Everybody start listening now.
We have ADHD, and then we have something that we're now starting to call induced ADHD, which is you act as though you have ADHD when biologically you just don't show the same mechanisms. So by all means, there is a biological ADHD that some people will have, but 50% of us, 60% of us, if you've been in a classroom recently, 100% of kids now have ADHD sometimes. What? No. So what's going on is every human brain has what's called a threshold. That is basically a hard limit that says if you want to pay attention to anything, that signal, that incoming stimuli has to be stronger than this limit. Anything below it, the brain is simply not going to process. And it's one of our first ports of call. It's called attention. It helps us kind of weed through all this noise out here. Now, the problem is we set our threshold to the context we are in. So if you're in a very quiet context, and maybe you're just out in a park and it's a beautiful sunny day, you're just with some loved ones taking a nap, your threshold is going to start to creep just because nothing really matters. But if you're being chased by a killer and you're in the woods and every little sound might mean life or death, your threshold is going to set to that to make more stuff come in. When we are in a busy environment, our threshold has to set itself incredibly high just to weed out all the additional noise. But in so doing, it makes it harder to sustain our focus on any one thing. So this is not ADHD, it's induced ADHD. When you are in an environment that's wickedly noisy, you will start to act as though you have ADHD purely because your brain needs to work overtime to block out the crap, basically.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you paid attention recently, but the world is a wickedly chaotic place now.
100%.
So kids are being just swarmed by information, so they're having to set their threshold in a way that's leading them to act in a specific way. And tech, there's no noisier system than tech. So I keep saying noise, and most people think auditory noise. It's everything. It's visual noise, tactile, it's everything. Tech works. It is literally called the attention economy. No tech is trying to hide this anymore. Their entire business model is to keep you flitting between things on a screen. That's how it works. That is noise, which means when we use a screen, our threshold starts to go up, which means they get noisier, which means our threshold goes up, so they get noisier. It's this battle between them and us to see can they change faster than our threshold can reset. And they're winning. This is why YouTube used to be YouTube, and now it has 1-minute videos. It's basically TikTok, and soon it's going to have 30-second videos. It's not a mystery. Yeah. But when we interact in that kind of world, we start to act as though we have ADHD because our brain simply has to cut out so much stuff it can't sustain for long periods of time, and we start to do this kind of hyperactive flitting. But again, it's induced. It's not a problem. It's not a biological issue. It's the context we've created is forcing us to behave in that way.
Yes, I remember getting my first iPhone when my son was around 2 years old, and that was the moment that I really started to feel like I had ADHD-like symptoms. It just, well, I don't have to retain that. I can just look it up again. I can just Google it. And now with AI, sure, I have so much power and yes, the ability to go further, faster, and do more, but I also have perfection paralysis and kind of like decision fatigue because I'm like, there's so much more. And then ChatGPT in particular keeps asking me like, would you like me to do this? Would you like me to do this? I'm like, I still need to process what you just told me. So anyway,
Oh, now we're starting to do research. More and more people aren't even reading the output anymore. Now they get AI to do something, they scroll right to the bottom and say, do it better. And then they copy and paste that. It's like, all right, what was the point?
So, gosh, I have so many questions. But like, are you seeing educators and administrators like owning this, accepting this, and working to do better? Are you seeing some of them pretending like you're wrong and they stand by their investment in this tech? Or is it like 50-50? What are you seeing? Is this being embraced for the most part?
Yeah, I think it's funny. One of the big questions everyone asks is like, how much pushback have you gotten? And the answer, absolutely a surprise to me, is basically none. Because I think everyone realizes, look, you can't argue the data. The data for positive tech doesn't really exist. And you can't argue the mechanisms. You can't say biologically the brain loves this because that's not how learning is going to work. So the only leg a lot of people have to stand on is promise, is this could be very good, is if we just had a little bit more time to develop another program, we just got to teach teachers how to use AI as though anyone has any clue how to use that well. And these promissory arguments are about the only thing kind of keeping this whole thing afloat. But how fast it's going, and I think you'll like this, was I published this book in December specifically because I knew 3 states had EdTech bills on the docket. And
wow.
I wanted to get the book out before they went in session in January 2026. So that was 3 states in January of this year. It's now July. Last count, 31 states have some form of EdTech somewhere on the docket.
Awesome.
It went so fast. And I did not see it coming, but I'm so grateful. Most people basically just said, there was kind of 3 reactions. The teachers, if you've been a teacher longer than 10 years, you said, thank you. I've been saying that forever. Like that came as no shock to them, but they finally said, there, someone else said it. Pay attention. If you were an administrator, a lot of them said, we just didn't know. Like if you're, and fair enough, they're not in classrooms, so they just see final scores and maybe what people are telling them. But they were saying, we had no clue it had gotten this bad. And so they were more than willing to pick up. But then, like you said, there are a few examples of people who have said, well, we've already sunk cost. We've already invested this much. It's going to be harder to go backwards than it is to just keep going forward. And I just say, that's fine. But we'll see you in about 5 years when you're going to have to pull the trigger on this because it's just not working. It was the smartphone thing. 2 years ago, people said there's no way you can ban smartphones from schools. A few started to do it. A few said, no, we're too far down the track. Now states are doing it. Now countries are doing it. It's a foregone conclusion. Smartphones will be out of schools. You cannot keep down that path anymore. And I think it's going to be similar with tech in the next 5 to 10 years. Tech will be there, but it's going to be way less prominent than it is right now.
For a parent who wants to push back at the school level but isn't sure where to start, what is the most effective thing they can actually do?
I'd say step 1 is get a coalition. It doesn't have to be huge, but if we look at like schools of fish and flocks of bird, if about 5% or less, depending on the size, it could be less than that to like 3%. If that small amount changes direction, everything goes with them. So one lone voice is rarely going to do anything. If you're speaking up, I hate it. I'm the guy. You will just be called a problem parent, and you'll be called annoying, and fair enough. But if you get a small coalition of parents together to all start saying the same thing, you'll start to see some move. And where do you start? You start at board meetings. You start at community outreach meetings, whatever your school is putting together to let you know what's happening. And always approach it from an angle of curiosity and development. Is if we go in guns blazing, screaming, pitchforks out, they're going to double down. They're going to say, shut up, you don't know what we do. But if we go in there and we say, you know, hey, I've been reading some stuff, I've been hearing some stuff about digital technology. Can we we're going to start with the data. Can you let us know in our school what programs are being used and for how long? And what you'll see is most schools will say no. They just don't know what programs they have. They have so many that they've stopped tracking them. And you go, cool, let's just do an experiment. Is there a way maybe over the next month we can just track use or something, or see what's being used, what's not? From there, then you can ask for data about efficacy. Say, okay, so do we have evidence that this has been benefiting learning compared to what we were doing before we got this program? And again, they'll say, we don't have the data for that. We go, sweet, let's just do some. So as much as you can kind of just walk them through the process of, let's do a tech audit together. Let's do some research to see efficacy. If it's not effective, what are some more effective tools? Well, we know, yeah, chalkboard is good. Let's go. So rather than yelling, just go in there nicely. We'll go as a curious people, just hearing some things, bringing some topics up, and then hopefully they'll just start to kind of come along board and start to check out ideas with you.
Yes, it's not about pointing fingers. It's about let's do better with the knowledge that we have today that we didn't have yesterday, and do what's best for our children and the outcomes that we're all spending time working on, which is learning, optimal learning. So
look, people ask me, like, who do you blame for all this? No one. I mean, if you think like teachers were just trying to do their best, schools are just trying to do their best. If most people think I would then blame tech, how could you? Look, tech is a company.
They're trying to generate revenue.
Companies make money. That's the only. And if you're surprised that they would lie to a school to make money, where have you been? That's what companies do. Anytime I see an advertisement, I go, I believe that. Sure, wink. It's sooner or later you got to realize everyone is just doing their job that they're meant to do. And now collectively, if we can recognize that tech and EdTech especially, they're going to continue to push. They're going to continue to try and make money off of our kids. Fine, I don't begrudge them that. I think I wouldn't do it, but that's what you do. It then becomes up to us to say exactly as you said. If we know better as parents and we can help teachers and administrators know better, then the onus is now on us. Going forward, I more easily place blame, yes. But up to this point, we were all just doing what we thought was best. Now we know better, so we do better.
That's right. Now, at home, what does this research mean practically for how parents manage device use, especially for homework and studying?
Just from a pure learning standpoint, all offline. If it's homework, offline. If it's a reading, offline. If it's a project, offline. Do everything analog. Buy a printer, go analog anytime you can in your house. Beyond that, that's where now your family gets to make its own decisions about tech. When it comes to school, we're going offline. When it comes to personal family tech use, now you can say, all right, maybe let's do a tech audit together, see where we're all using tech. Do my kids see me use tech personally too much? What message is that sending? Do we need to do a tech-free day? Do we need to do a tech-free vacation? That's where personally you and your family can figure out what are your values, what are your goals, and go that direction. But when it comes to learning, I have yet to hear an argument for tech. If someone is sent home with an iPad and your kid's homework is online, print it. If your teacher says you have to submit your assignment online in an LMS, watch. Bring in your hand printed out thing, hand it to your teacher. I'm 99% confident most of them are not going to go, sorry, and throw it in the trash can. They're going to figure out a way to make it work. They're going to work with you on this. Wow. And if for some reason they won't, sweet. That becomes our job as the parent to say, when you're done with your homework, give it to me. I'll photograph it, send it over. When it comes to learning, offline, offline, offline. And the only time, I very rarely say ban anything, but I will. Ban AI from your home when it comes to learning. AI is not a learning tool. It never has been. It was never meant to do that. It's like, that is the one thing it is geared to not do is help you learn and understand. It is there to produce stuff for you. So as much as you can when it comes to learning in your household, AI is not the tool that you use. And a lot of people, I love it. A lot of people say, oh, well, kids could use it to, ask them questions and probe deeper. Mate, what you could do and what people actually do when it comes to tools are two very different things. Well, think about it. Man, I could pop my car into neutral and push it to work every day to increase my fitness. But of course, no one is going to actually do that because that's not what it's designed for. That doesn't fit into the milieu of the tool. It's the same with AI. Yeah, you could. Man, I could line up cigarettes and use them for numeracy. But most people are then going to smoke the cigarettes. It's the same with AI. It doesn't matter what you could do. It's what are people doing with it. And when it comes to learning, the vast majority of use cases are just cheating. It's just avoiding the work.
So on the flip side, because somebody listening to this could argue, we're just anti-tech, right? And we want to go back to the 80s or 50s or whatever. You've said this isn't about rejecting technology altogether. So where does technology have a legitimate place in education, and how should families and schools think about that?
Yeah, so there's going to be the primary use case is something is better than nothing, right? You've got a kid with a specific learning disability who cannot interact without tech. Of course we bring in tech. You're a surgeon trying to practice heart surgery and you don't want to kill patients. Of course you use tech. There's a global pandemic and we're forced to close schools. Of course you use tech. Something will be better than nothing. But if you ever have the choice between two somethings, you always pick the something that aligns better with the goal you're trying to achieve. And if that goal is learning, tech is almost never going to be that better something. So here's where we draw a line between teaching about tech and teaching through tech. One is curriculum, one is pedagogy. A lot of people say we have to teach kids digital skills. I can make an argument with data that that's not true, that actually the more we focus on digital skills, the worse their digital literacy becomes. Why? Because learning to use a computer has very little to do with learning how to use a computer. It's what are you bringing to the computer to make that interaction meaningful. Orson Welles said it best, I could teach you to make a film in a day and a half, but it's going to take me decades till you have something meaningfully to say when you make a film. That's the tech problem. But cool, let's just accept it. We want to teach some things about tech. That's curriculum. I want to teach you coding. That's a class. I want to teach you AI literacy. That's a class. The problem is through some linguistic alchemy, the concept we need to teach kids computer skills has morphed into we need to teach all skills through a computer. Now you're seeing computers in math. You're seeing computers in reading. No, that's a pedagogy argument. You've just subtly turned a curriculum argument into pedagogy, and now you're stepping on teachers' toes. So when it comes to pedagogy, teaching and learning, always pick something that aligns best. If you want to have a class on tech, we have a computer lab. The same way if you want to learn oboe, we have a music lab. You want to learn basketball? We have a gym. There's a specific spot in the school where you can go to learn about things without then assuming a kid needs to carry his oboe into every class or else learning won't happen. So I think by all means we can keep tech there. It just becomes locked down and controlled. It's no longer every kid has access all the time. It's when it's time to have access, there is a specific room or cart where teachers are now driving the show. Does that kind of make sense?
Not only does it kind of make sense, I want to stand up and yell, preach. I'm like, let's go. Yeah,
mic drop.
Nailed it. Pow, 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 pow. Yeah, and you also brought back a really fun memory for me. It was, I think, 2013 maybe. And I there wasn't great software that I knew of outside of Photoshop to make mock-ups for apps that you wanted to design. And I wasn't a graphic designer, but had a really great idea for this app that needed to be made. And, going back and forth with engineers and designers, and I was like, no. And finally I just sat down with good old Crayola markers, pencil, paper, and I literally drew out and colored every app screen and wrote what each button needed to say. And I handed it to them and I was like, build this. And they loved it and they did. And I was like, yeah, it felt good.
It sounds crazy. If the best films, the best filmmakers still use hand-drawn storyboards. They don't, like, even though we have tools that if you know how to use it well enough, you can kind of make the film in 3D, and still the best will sit down. Exactly. You know what I know how to do? Stick men and a shot list. Do it. And that helps you think through the process so much better than the amount of time you waste just trying to make a tool do something for you. And then you get so in love with the tool's output that you're like, that must be what it should be. Yeah. I think one of the things I always try and get people to remember is we have elevated digital technology so high above us, and I don't know why. We forget just how powerful human beings are. I mean, the Pantheon, the city of Venice, the aqueducts, the entire rail network, refrigeration, going to the moon, building the atom bomb. These are all things we did without computers. Hell, we invented computers.
Right?
When we let human brains work, it's not pretty, it ain't smooth, it ain't cute, but the output is always incredible. For some reason, we invent this tool, and we have now put that above us, and we assume it is better than us at thinking. It is better than us at creation, and nothing could be further from the truth. So I think if we can just step back from our love affair with tech, take it off the pedestal, and remember, no, this is the most complex thing in the universe. The known universe bows to the brain that we have in our heads. We understand a computer. I can tell you line for line what a computer is doing. I can't even begin. We only know about 2% of what the brain is doing half the time. We are way out of our depth when it comes to this. Remember that, and remember our power and how much we've done without computers. Embrace that. It is not being a Luddite or anti-tech to say, no, I want my kids to know things. I want learning to flourish. I want human beings to step back into their power and build again, answer questions. Dude, I'm sorry to go on a tangent here.
Do not apologize. This is amazing.
Literally 2 days ago, Sam Altman, or no, it was Amadeo from Claude. They were saying, how are you going to make money with AI? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he said the goal was always to create the AI, and then the AI would tell us how to make money. The hell are you thinking?
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
You never even stopped to think, what is a business model? Like, that's a hard thing to do. No, you just imagine I'd invent something and it would tell me why it's so dang important. That is like the pinnacle of outsourcing all human ability and knowledge and skills to a tool and pretending it somehow knows better than we do, without once stopping and recognizing the only things it ever knows are what we did, and it's just parroting it back to us. So stop thinking these tools are objective and truer than we are. No, we are the powerful ones. Let your kids think, let your kids learn, give them the best chance to actually do things. That's where we're going to get the solutions we need for this world.
Yes, oh my gosh, like +1, yes please, upvote, retweet, share far and wide. This was, I mean, goodness gracious, there's so much goodness here. And to your point, AI and technology don't have a soul. I mean, there's a reason, like, I still feel bad whenever I am interacting with AI and, like, I don't say thank you or please. And I asked it one day, I was like, do you give me better answers when I'm polite versus when I'm not? And it was like, nope. And I'm like, it just told me that I could save time. So anyway, beyond that, you're now working on what you're calling the learning blueprint. And you've got more books in the works, which I don't know how you do that, because writing a book is the most painful thing I've ever done, including I'd rather give birth again than write another book. But what do you think is the next big conversation we need to be having about how kids learn?
I'm gonna say the worst than writing a book is trying to raise money. I'm trying to do a documentary. Raising money is I do not understand it. Some people I'm sure are good at it. I am not that guy. Some people raise billions of dollars. I'm like,
how do they do that?
Hi, Dad. Can you send me $10? Thanks.
Can I get a HELOC?
I think the next big move is, and this is what the Learning Blueprint, my documentaries, everything are going to focus on, is what is learning. I think the tech argument is going to galvanize people against something and wants to go down a better path to say, okay, let's improve our kids' cognition. the next inevitable question is going to be how? What is cognition? And I think just like we were talking about earlier with the more our kids understand the process of learning, not strategies, the process, the more agency they can take over that process. That's my goal, is to start getting that process out far and wide so that people know learning is just a biological thing. It's not magic. It's not ethereal. We understand it. And the better you understand it, the more you can align your practices, your thinking with that process to make learning better, deeper, stronger.
Amazing. Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, let's say there are listeners here that have deep pockets and want to fund what you're working on. Where should they go? What should they do?
Call my dad. No. So my website is lmeglobal.net. So that's Learning Made Easy, lmeglobal.net. And that's where I just put up all my new writing and new videos that we put out that has to do with this stuff, new research. I'm always trying to kind of share new research with everyone. And then also, if you just look up Jared Cooney Horvath online, you'll find I have a YouTube, a Substack, LinkedIn. I'm kind of out there. So if you just want to kind of keep an eye on where the research is going and new arguments and new data, just follow along. I'll do my best to keep you up to speed.
Awesome. Well, I am so grateful for your dedication, time, expertise, for what you've done to share that with the world. And we'll make sure to link all of the relevant sites and places for our followers and listeners and viewers to connect with you, because this is important. This is so important. And gosh, if you had not embarked on this, where would we be, right? Maybe we'd still be at 3 states instead of 30. Who knows? Thank you. Thank you on behalf of people across the globe. Is there anything that we did not cover or discuss today that you think would be helpful?
No, I thought that was an awesome conversation. I'm more than happy with it.
Fabulous. Well, both Juice, who is asleep, and I enjoyed this. That was not boredom. He had to process so much.
Just so much coming at Juice. His little tail is flicking.
So
too
out.
Much.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, and we have linked to everything. So go forth and immerse yourself.